Now, I've never performed an exorcism myself, even though I'm a pastor. But I have been in the room when an exorcism has been conducted. I've been on the support team for another pastor as he was doing this for someone. More specifically, cleansing a home of a demon. Its tenants, the single mom and the adult children who lived there, were fully and firmly convinced that they had a demon in that home. The daughter had conversations with this, as witnessed by the mother, in their words. The pastor that I was with believed beyond the shadow of a doubt that a demon was in that home. I have no reason to believe that they were wrong. The people who lived there had been tormented for months before they finally called me and this other pastor for help. Their daughter, who was convinced that this demon had spoken with her and was tormenting her, was so afraid. For weeks she had been unable to sleep in her own home and had been staying with a girlfriend. And she did confess to using Ouija boards. After the demon was exorcised from the home, I saw everything change for good. There was a whole new countenance in the mother and the children. They started coming out to church for a while. Physical maladies that the mother had, like fibromyalgia and other things, disappeared, and she ended up getting married. And I'm not saying that if you're single and you want a husband or a wife, you've got a demon. But it worked for her, all right? That's my one story. The other one's closer to home, and by no means was I going to share this. And then Barb said I had to share it, so. And the reason I didn't want to share it is because my natural bent. Remember when I was talking about people who are uncomfortable talking about demons? They fit into two categories, the Voldemort category and the category of not wanting to appear unenlightened. Well, I fit in this category, all right? I try to be enlightened, and so, as does that child. But Barb thought I should share this story with you, and maybe some of you would be able to relate for what it's worth. First year I was in seminary, Barb and I lived in seminary housing. For those of you who don't know what a seminary is, it doesn't sound very exciting. It's not really that exciting. It's a school for people who want to do this, all right? Actually, not really this. Who want to be pastors of churches with pulpits and everything. So when I was in seminary, we lived in seminary housing. And I had an experience that I'll probably never fully understand, and it's an experience that I'll never forget. It was the dead of night, and I awoke from a deep sleep because I had this strong sense that I was being watched. You ever have that? Where you have a strong sense that someone or something is watching you? I had a sense that someone else was in the room, and I mean, I was wide awake. This was not a dream. And at the foot of our futon bed, we couldn't afford a real bed, so we were in a futon bed. There was this outline of a figure. It was completely black. I could not see any facial expressions. There were no clothes, certainly no fire or pitchfork, in case you're wondering. And the feeling I had as this figure was in the room at the foot of the bed, looking, bearing down on me, was that I was like in the presence of a black hole. Right? It literally sucked the energy out of me. For a moment, I couldn't move my body. I couldn't speak. I was like totally freaking out, and I couldn't speak. I was entirely unable. I was that gripped by fear that I was in the presence of something powerful and something evil. By this point, Barb was awake in bed, probably because I'm shaking or something, who knows. And she was leaning over to me. I couldn't talk to her. She didn't see the form, but instinctively I started praying in my head, I belong to Jesus, you have no power here. I belong to Jesus, you have no power here. I belong to Jesus, you have no power here. And after a few moments, the figure was gone, and I was able to tell Barb what had happened. And she thought I'd completely lost my marbles and needed strong medication. That's not what she thought. She totally believed what I told her and said it was probably a demon. Now I'm freaking out, all right? Because I didn't think it was a demon. And she suggested that since I'm at seminary, I should tell my professors and maybe get some answers as to what this might mean or what it's all about. And I said, are you crazy? If I tell my professors, they're going to have me committed. But she insisted, and because I'm the head of my home, I changed my stance and agreed. And I talked to the one professor that I trusted enough not to throw me out of seminary. The guy that I used to do 100-mile bike rides with and so forth. And he came over to our apartment and he listened to the story, the details of the story. And at the end, he basically said, it's very probable that you saw a demon, that it was a demon. After all, here you are at seminary. You're following God's call into full-time ministry where you hope to lead people to a saving faith in Jesus Christ, His Son. And it's the very beginning of your seminary training, and you're probably insecure. And an experience like this might make you so insecure that you would forfeit that calling. And from Satan's perspective, if he could mess you up, if he could get you afraid and cause more doubt and keep one anointed person from going out into full-time ministry, that would be a win for the dark side. And so my professor encouraged Barb and I, regardless of whether it was a demon or whether it wasn't a demon, to stay united as a husband and wife, to make sure that we took time daily to pray together and guard our walk with Christ. Essentially, to be careful not to give the dark side any portals into our marriage or into our individual lives. There, you heard it. Now you can have me committed. Very quickly, there's one other reason I won't go to drag me to hell. And that's because its ending, according to the trailer, is wrong from a biblical perspective. And our text, which I read from Hebrews 5, verse 14, tells us to be people of discernment, people who distinguish between right and wrong. And according to the Bible, the ending of the movie is wrong. The trailer says that after going to the psychic and then the medium, Christine learns, and I quote, that nothing can save her. Nothing can save her. And that's wrong, as maybe many of you know. Without exception, the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, reveal that God's Son Jesus has power over both Satan and demons. In every encounter that Jesus has with the demonic or spiritual forces of evil, he wins handily. Not by a narrow margin. He wins handily. He doesn't need to yell and shout at demons. He simply speaks to them. And they're disarmed, and they disappear. In fact, the Bible tells us that Satan and demons have already been defeated by Jesus. And you can read about that in Colossians 2, verse 15. And I think the home groups this week will be looking at that passage. Jesus did this by dying on the cross, and on the third day, by demonstrating his power over all powers, by rising from the grave. And he did that on Easter Sunday. What's more, in the movie, Christine, the main character, is completely overwhelmed by this demon. It gets the best of her. And the Bible tells us that if we're followers of Jesus Christ, we need not be overwhelmed by demons. We don't even need to be overwhelmed by Satan himself. James 4, verse 7 says, resist the devil, resist Satan, and he will flee from you. He will flee from you. Finally, while we may wonder at times why God permits demons to continue to exist, believers must always remember that the final overthrow of Satan and his demons is certain. It is certain. In fact, according to Revelation chapter 20, verse 10, when Jesus returns to judge the world, the devil and his minions will be thrown into a lake of fire that burns with sulfur, and I quote, there they will be tormented day and night forever and forever. And so this message on demons this morning, I would hope, would be a hope-filled message for those of you who identify yourselves privately and publicly as followers of God's Son, Jesus Christ.